It costs a lot of money to have your kids in kids' sports. How can you manage the costs? I've got two hockey mums on the show with answers starting right now.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
According to a study done last year by Ipsos for Global News, 55% of families feel stretched thin because of the cost of after-school programs like hockey and swimming, and almost a third, 32%, are using debt to fund these costs. That's scary. Of course, you want your kids to be active, and they're kids. You want them to have some fun, and hockey and swimming and other activities are fun and good exercise. So how can you afford the cost of kids' sports and other activities without breaking the bank and going into debt? Fortunately, I've got some experts right here at Hoyes Michaelis, Rebecca Martyn and Kristen Kral. Kristen is a credit counselor in our Brantford office, so Sean, our videographer, caught up with Kristen at the Wayne Gretzky Center in Brantford. A beautiful facility, lots of ice rinks, 2 swimming pools, a gym, great facilities, and Kristen spends a lot of time there with her husband and 2 kids, so she's a great person to give us the scoop on the cost of kids' sports. The most obvious question is, how do you afford hockey? Here's what Kristen said.
Well, I went from paying daycare expenses to paying for hockey. So I just kind of took that money I used for daycare and I flipped it over to using for hockey and any other sports that they want to be involved in for my kids.
So, Kristen, what costs are involved?
So because hockey has a wide range of levels, so there's the house league level. So house league would entail just one registration fee, which would include a couple ice times, as well as that includes your jerseys and your socks. When you come to travel hockey, now you're getting into registration fees, you have a representative fee, and then depending on your team budget, you will have a monthly fee for 7 to 8 months. That monthly fee will include it could be your jerseys, depending on if it's in the budget, tournaments. Then it also includes ice time as well as development, dry land training. On the outside of your team budget, if it's not included, you might have to pay for jerseys, you might have to pay for track suits, as well as it could be the shorts and t-shirts that are not included. For travel hockey, you also have to get sponsorship as well as fundraising to be able to pay for the travel hockey as a team. So house league here, it's almost $475 right now just for the house league. Travel hockey, you get the $475, and then it could start anywhere from $600 up to $850 for the representative fee, and then it could be $150 to $250 per month, depending on your team budget for a parent to pay on top of that.
And then travel.
And then you travel, so depending on your tournaments, how many tournaments are away that you have to stay at the hotel. So for example, my son's team this year, we only have one away tournament, which could charge, it's going to be probably about $1,000 for 3 days away. With house league, it wouldn't be the cost. It wouldn't be that bad because for about $500, that's you have to think about it, if it's 2 ice times for almost 8 months, it actually breaks it down to about $10 a skate for a kid, which is actually pretty cheap. Equipment, if you can buy it used, you can probably get for under $100, $150. So house league, affordable. Travel, not affordable as much because you have to plan, you have to budget.
So that's obviously a lot of money. Equipment costs, travel fees, and other costs can really add up. So, Kristen, what's your advice for parents?
So depending on if it's their first time coming out, I mean, they do offer many different programs to try. Like I said, you can start out, do a 6-week program, where if it's your first time, depending on your age. So they had a program this year offered from 6 to 10-year-olds. It's what's called the first shift, where you pay a registration fee and it includes your equipment for $199 for 6 weeks to try it out, to see if you like it before you go and pay all that money for the expense of, equipment and the registration fee. There's also, you can just start out just doing house league to see if your kid likes it and enjoys it. If they need equipment, there is definitely areas where you can get used equipment. There's used equipment either at some of the stores here in Brantford, as well as there's a lot of buy and sell groups for hockey families that are selling old equipment for a cheaper price. So that's what I would suggest definitely for anybody who's trying to get into it and they don't have the funds for it. to try that. There is actually also, if you want to apply for financial assistance, there is an Arnold Anderson Foundation who does help families who can't afford to play hockey. They will help with the money part of this.
So should parents ever consider buying new equipment or just always buy used?
When they're younger, I would suggest probably more used. Like I said, my son had to start out with equipment, but now my daughter is actually using his old equipment for what she can fit into. Skates, it might be something that you might have to go to a newer skate, but there's many different models of skates that you can go for, like I said, not the most expensive skate. And then I know also at the sports stores here that they actually offer better discounts on older models.
So, practical advice, what does Kristen tell clients when she's doing credit counseling sessions?
I know I've talked to individuals that we kind of budget around when sports are happening, because some of them could be in hockey season where you get a fee that comes about July, August, or September, depending. And it could be, like I said, $500 right out of your pocket. If you're doing travel, it could be up to $1,000. So I'll kind of talk to them about budgeting per month to kind of save for it so you don't get hit with a large fee all at once.
This is where budgeting is key. You know when hockey season is coming, so you want to plan ahead. How do you do that? Here's Kristen's advice.
So the best advice is for if you want to get your kid involved with sports, you kind of do your research on, okay, what sport do you think they really want to get into? If there's anything for free to go out for a free skate or something for free to try out, say for soccer, do that first and make sure they like it. You don't want to sign up for something and they hate it and you just spent all that money and they don't want to be there. That's the first step I would suggest. Kind of research to see, is there a way to save money by, buying used equipment? If you need financial assistance, see what type of programs are out there first.
Or is there different ones like for local communities?
I think there is. I know, like I said, that the first shift program is, I think, in certain cities that they offer it. The Arnold Anderson Foundation, I'm not 100% familiar, but I think it's based in Brantford, but it could be all through, I said, Ontario. I haven't done a research on it, but there are different programs that come out. There are, like I said, even starter kits especially for hockey, that you can buy at a sports store. And it comes with most of your equipment other than, say, your skates and your hockey stick for $100.
Kristen mentions the Arnold Anderson Sport Fund, which is in Brantford, and provides grants of up to $350 per calendar year to help cover sports registration fees, but not equipment, travel, or private lessons. Other communities have similar funds, so do your research. The First Shift program is for families new to hockey, and it's all across Canada, so it's a great, affordable way to get an introduction to the game. Sean also traveled to Windsor and got some tips from Rebecca Martyn, the Hoyes Michaelis licensed insolvency trustee in Windsor. Rebecca made the same points that Kristen made, that there are different levels of hockey and some cost more than others. Here's what Rebecca had to say.
So my son plays AAA hockey, and admittedly, I mean, there is a cost to it. Travel hockey costs more than house league. AAA costs more than AA and single A and AE. A couple things parents can do to help reduce the cost, and it's something that we looked into as well. The first thing is, thankfully, most travel teams, or most AAA teams anyway, you can pay your registration fee monthly. So that breaks it down. So you don't need to write this big check for multiple thousands of dollars. You can break it off over the 8 or 9 months of the hockey season. The second thing parents can do is you can look for sponsors for your child. The sponsor gets the opportunity to put their name bar on the back of their jersey or even their hoodie or their jacket. And in exchange for that, that will lower your registration costs. The other thing to do, and it's something that we did, is look on Kijiji for used equipment. You can buy used pants, skates. You might need to replace the blades, but you can get used chest protectors. My son's a goalie, so we've purchased pads, used pads, blockers, gloves that way. And for the registration costs, you also need to look at what social services agencies are out there. So not necessarily social. What other organizations are out there for sports? Most people have heard about Jumpstart. They'll help you with the registration costs. But in terms of some of the equipment costs, you can look at organizations like KidSport, and in Windsor we have KidSport Windsor, who will also help you subsidize some of the cost of the equipment to bring the cost down even more. But the big thing for parents, the equipment is expensive. Go to the association sales at the beginning of the year. Someone is always outgrowing their equipment. So buy used. Make sure it's still going to be suitable for your son or daughter, but just make sure that you bring your son or daughter with you, you have them try it on, you make sure it's going to fit. And then when you're done with it after a year or two, when your child grows out of it, put it back into the swap meet, get some money back, and then just keep exchanging your equipment that way. That's the best money saving tip I find I have.
Both Kristen and Rebecca mentioned some programs that can help. Here's some more detail on that.
Well, that is where I mentioned Canadian Sire has Jumpstart. They will help with the registration costs of the sporting activity. And then if you need help with the equipment, you can file an application with KidSport. They're in most cities. There's one in Windsor. I think it's just kidsport.ca/Windsor. They can help you offset the cost of the equipment.
Rebecca mentioned KidSport. The website address is kidsportcanada.ca. That's kidsportcanada.ca. And again, there are lots of programs out there that can help, so do your research and see what's available in your community. So here's Rebecca's final advice.
At the start of the season, talk to the manager, find out what costs are going to be involved, and then just write out a budget. And making sure that's something that you can fit into on a monthly basis. And the other thing is, in addition to the equipment, look for cost savings. There are some times where when you go to tournaments, you are required to stay in the tournament hotel. But if you're going on an away trip, you don't necessarily need to stay in the same hotel as the team. Look for cheaper accommodations. If you have family and friends in the neighborhood, stay with them. Though they're gonna reciprocate when they have a tournament, they're gonna need to stay with you. But then also look at ways to cut down on meal expenses. I mean, every player that I saw walking into the hotel is bringing a cooler with them. And yes, there might be other things in the cooler as well, but then there's also, sandwiches, fruit, anything that can help you reduce your cost of having to buy food all the time, because those costs are going to add up. So just look for all those little things that you can do along the way to save the money.
That's good advice, so I'm going to turn it back to Kristen for her final words of advice.
You shouldn't always, like I said, worry about your kids being in sports. It's a great thing, but instead, if you need to, spend money on just living day by day is the number one thing I think they should worry about. And then if you can kind of budget and save somewhere, that's when you can kind of enroll in your programs for sports.
Don't be afraid to tell your children
Exactly, or you don't have to do the rep part of the sport. I know, like they said, there's a lot of, like for dance moms, I know there's the rec part of like the recreational, and then there's, the competitive. It's very expensive competitive dance. So you want to kind of just say, we can't afford it yet. Let's try and save up and see if we can afford it for the following year. It's all about trying to budget to make sure you can afford it, so you don't end up having to charge it and then not be able to pay for it. And then you kind of get into the routine of, they're really good, they really enjoy this hockey team, and they want to play on it every year, but then you don't have the funds to actually provide for them to actually play that sport. Because it can get expensive, especially if you are in travel hockey. The hotels, some teams could be traveling 3 to 4 times, and that could add an extra $3,000 to $5,000 on your cost per year.
Extra gas.
Well, it's gas, it's, eating, like I said, you can bring, I bring drinks everywhere we go if we're traveling. Could be just an away game, could be a home game. I bring drinks along to save. I said just packing snacks. But if you go to a hotel, there's only so much you can bring. So then you have to kind of start budgeting for, okay, do we have coupons to go out to a restaurant or somewhere like Subway? Do they have coupons where it's cheaper for us? Do we pack some sandwiches so it saves us a meal?
So that's a lot of good, practical advice. Plan ahead. Can't overemphasize that enough. The hockey season, the baseball season, swimming season, you know when they're going to be there. Plan ahead. Start saving money in advance. Buy used equipment. So ask older kids about hand-me-downs, their swap meets, as Rebecca mentioned in what she said. Ask family for birthday or Christmas gifts of equipment. Hockey sticks, for example, something pretty easy to give, obviously will be warmly received. See if a sports camp qualifies as a daycare expense. There are rules that apply, but if your kid is younger, there may be a tax break in it for you by claiming it as a daycare expense. And finally, don't feel guilty if you can't afford everything. Your kid perhaps can't play every single sport all year long. Use it as a teaching moment for your kids. Explain what you can do, what you can't do, how much things cost. Everybody benefits by understanding what's going on. That's our show for today. Thanks to our two hockey parents, Kristen, our credit counselor in Brantford, and Rebecca Martyn, our licensed insolvency trustee in Windsor, for their advice. Thanks for listening and watching on YouTube. Until next week, I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.